Hey everyone, this is Kit Cabello with Hard Lens Media, and this is Perspective. So corporate media wants you to think that former Vice President Joe Biden has learned his lesson and that he is inevitable. Well, this is going to be a video to just kind of give you a short reminder who exactly he is. So here's the former Second Lady, Jill Biden, speaking to the host of The Daily Show, Trevor Noah, about the lessons that good old sleepy, creepy Uncle Joe has learned. Enjoy.
There are obstacles that you've already had to face. You know, for instance, there was the story of him just being too misogynist with people. You know, and as to everyone said, not in a sexual way, they were just like, some women were like, we weren't comfortable with that. You both came out and you spoke to it. Do you think it is strange or fair that sometimes you will get asked about things that should be asked to your husband, or do you think that's part of the game?
No, I think that's part of it, and I think, look, you know, it took a lot of courage for women to step forward and say, you know, you're in my space, and Joe heard that, and it just won't happen again. I mean,
right.
He heard what they were saying, and so that's part of it. I mean, when you run together, and I'll be out there with him on the campaign trail, because I really do believe myself that he will make the best president. So I'll be out there.
Well, we'll see you there. We'll be following the race. Congratulations on an amazing memoir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Wonderful
seeing you. Where the Light Enters is available now. Dr. Jill Biden, everybody. We'll be right back.
Wasn't that a great book review? I mean, check out the full interview in its entirety. I mean, yeah, it's great. And I find it interesting that Jill Biden seems to be getting a lot of coverage for a presidential candidate's wife, whereas, you know, there are others, you know, significant others in the race as well who are supporting their spouse that's in the race. But she seems to be, again, getting a lot of media coverage. And she has stated that, you know, former Vice President Joe Biden has learned his lesson. Just for context, we're going to rewind back the clocks just before former Vice President Joe Biden made his announcement. In fact, this is a clip from Fox News in which they are interviewing one of Joe Biden's accusers in regards to how he was inappropriately touching her. Check it out.
And this is a Fox News alert as we await a formal 2020 announcement of some kind from former Vice President Joe Biden to enter the 2020 race. The woman who initiated a national conversation about Biden's inappropriate touching has plenty more to say about his anticipated candidacy. So let's talk to her. Former Nevada State Assemblywoman Lucy Flores joins us tonight. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Lucy, I know that you have written just days ago talking about where this whole conversation went afterwards, because there were some people who immediately reacted saying, listen, she's not claiming a sexual assault. She's not claiming formal sexual harassment. And then on the other side, you have people that, well, he's just a serial hugger. You say there's this gray area in between, and kind of what you've been talking about has gotten lost in the mix.
Absolutely. The basis of the behavior that I talked about was something much more serious than just a hug. I mean, that's where the conversation devolved into, but that's not where it started. We talked about the fact that I had no previous relationship with the vice president, that it was moments before a high-profile event where I was supposed to speak to hundreds of people. It was unexpected. He was behind me. He held onto my shoulders. He got close to my body from behind, smelled my hair, kissed my head, all moments before I was supposed to do this event. And that is not a hug. That is just unprofessional, inappropriate behavior, no matter who does it, but certainly from, at the time, the second most powerful man in the country. And that conversation, I think, really got lost. But my bigger point that I was trying to make is that this isn't just inappropriate behavior by the Vice President of the United States. This is inappropriate behavior no matter who does it.
Well, and I think there was something on a blog called theconversation.com that kind of encapsulates some of this conversation. It says, Biden's alleged creepiness presents a test for Me Too. It presses us to consider how wide we want to cast the censorious net. Should it include behavior that's not overtly sexual? It also demonstrates that the goal of women's empowerment is often not aligned with the deplatforming of powerful men. And a lot of people out there have been saying, like, listen, we like this guy because he happens to be on our team. We're not going to call him out for this. But you say short of something like a sexual assault, there is this power dynamic for a lot of women who are in a situation, whether it's an office or wherever it is, where they don't feel comfortable in that situation saying to a powerful man, hey, don't smell my hair. It's not okay.
Absolutely, 1,000%. And really the biggest reason why I decided to come out and actually say something was because this was a big part of Vice President Biden's behavior as far as his history is concerned. This isn't the first time that I've pointed out this inappropriate behavior. There's been pictures, there have been articles written, there are videos. So this was something that was very well known, but that wasn't taken, in my opinion, seriously at all. In fact, oftentimes it was made fun of. People joked around. They said, oh, that's just Biden being Biden.
I mean, he made a joke himself a couple days later.
Exactly, which was so incredibly disrespectful and frankly to me demonstrated that the words that he said, that he was going to take this very seriously, that he was going to listen and he was going to learn, to me that indicated that he didn't mean that at all. If literally the next day he was joking about it. And so to me, like, this really needs to be an expansion of this conversation about consent, about this is my body, my space. You don't get to come into it. You don't get to touch me unless I give you permission or unless, it's social touching. I'm certainly not out there trying to say, oh, we can't give friendly hugs anymore and we can't,
It's fascinating knowing that there's a lot of media coverage on Joe Biden, and they're just really failing to acknowledge the impact that he's done on a lot of people, specifically the women that are stepping up, accusing him of these, inappropriate touching. And you would assume that from Vice President Joe Biden's apology that he learned his lesson, that he's moving on. Well, recently there was a town hall in which he was a part of, the American Federation Teachers Town Hall. And there is a video of him basically speaking to a young child, and he is kind of being very close and in her space as well. It's just something to point out that perhaps maybe good old Vice President Joe Biden really hasn't learned his lesson at all. Check it out.
I'm going to write you a longer answer and tell you the exact things I would do, okay? Okay? Promise? I'll bet you're as bright as you're good looking. I tell you what. What's your favorite subject?
Journalism.
Journalism? Whoa. Whoa. I better be more circumspect in my answers. Those guys back there. Look, come here. Come here. Go ahead, the next question.
I love it. Okay, over here.
Washington Post, New York Times, all these guys. You ought to go back and talk to them, okay? All right? And by the way, that's one of the things that's a dangerous idea. As these guys will tell you, I'm not always their favorite subject. But the truth of the matter is, the reason we are who we are is called a free press. Continuing to denigrate. That's the guy you want to talk to.
So he takes a kid without even asking permission, brings her to the press, and is basically in her space, has his hands on her shoulders, and is very close to her. And it's very creepy to watch something like this because I don't see any of the other Democratic challengers doing that at all. None of them. This is a clearly obvious lesson to us all that perhaps there are reasons why Vice President Joe Biden has very little interactions with the press, and there's probably a good reason why he does very little town halls. Also important to note that he has said that the press doesn't really like him, but he's in support of a free press. Well, this is the same press that basically says that Biden is the front runner, and yet no one is calling out the fact that he was being very inappropriate towards this young girl. I find it disgusting. Don't be surprised if we see future events where he's doing the same thing again and again, or he's joking about asking permission to touch somebody and then having the whole audience laugh at him. If this was somebody like Anthony Weiner or Harvey Weinstein or even President Donald Trump, you would expect the press to be on point and attacking them. But for some reason, Joe Biden gets a slap on the hand and a free pass. And that's that. But I think it's also important to note that we should cover some more things about Vice President Joe Biden. For example, his long, sad history of plagiarism. I'm going to pull up a clip real quick, and you guys just notice something. There's Senator Bernie Sanders, and then there is Vice President Joe Biden. So This is just a captured image that I got from Cenk Uyghur's tweet in regards to calling out how the press is saying that Joe Biden is this amazing genius front runner in regards to calling out education reform or numerous other issues. But mind you, this is an article from the Huffington Post and Politico and Vox. Now, mind you, on the left is Bernie Sanders, and these were statements that he has made just 10 days before even Biden did any of this. First, let's look at how Bernie Sanders is calling out reform on and crackdown on charter schools. Then we look at Joe Biden criticizes charter schools. And for some reason, the press is saying that he's a genius at this and that he's calling out reform and numerous other issues. But this is just only something recent. But if we look at good old Joe Biden's past, let's just keep scrolling down again. Look, the quotes are almost the same. This is something that Joe Biden does all the time. And let's just scroll down even further. Again, it is the same. He's just plagiarizing and copying somebody. And for the record, Bernie Sanders has been consistent and on point with all of his progressive policies since day one. It's also important to note that Joe Biden, he has a career of taking other people's work. In fact, we have just a few short clips in regards to showing where Joe Biden stands in regards to copying people's work and plagiarizing. In fact, here's something way back when he started first running for president.
While at Syracuse Law School, Biden was involved in a plagiarism incident. He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation. He was given an F, but appealed to the faculty and allowed to repeat the course. He got a B. This comes in the middle of another controversy about plagiarism in Biden's campaign speeches. Today, he dismissed charges that he routinely adopts phrases from other politicians' speeches, called it much ado about nothing. Essentially, Biden said, everyone does it.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you'd have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
But to the political community in Washington, it all seems of a piece. Plagiarism at law school, plagiarism on the stump, for example.
But this standard is not a measure of how we can evaluate the condition of our society. It cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
This is how it sounded when Robert Kennedy said those words in 1968.
Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He has also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock, all without credit.
That our generation of Americans will pay any price, bear any burden, accept any challenge, and meet any hardship.
President John Kennedy's inaugural, 1961. Biden's critics say he sells himself as a man whose words and visions can inspire a new generation in politics. But if the thoughts, phrases, and visions really belong to others, it's a form of false advertising. Robert Kennedy's friend and speechwriter.
If what he did was to present Robert Kennedy's thoughts and statements and speeches as his own, then of course it's counterfeit.
2 things to take away from that clip. Number 1, don't you miss the days when the press would actually call out people on their bullshit? And then number 2, Biden seems to lack the idea or even grasp the concept of having an original thought. The whole man's career is plagiarizing and copying and taking away other people's ideas. He's already trying to take away some of Bernie Sanders' ideas and make it seem like he's the one who came up with them. But, it just goes even further. Let's rewind back the clocks to 2016, where good old Biden copies Bill Clinton of all people. Check it out.
Because we lead not only by the example of our power, but by the power of our example.
The power of our example, than by the example of our power.
And again, that just shows that Biden really lacks any idea of his own, and he's going to take someone else's words and work. But there's one work that he is proud of and hasn't apologized for, and that's the crime bill of 1994, a bill that he helped draft. For the record, President Bill Clinton was the one that made it happen in the end, but he has gone back on it and said that he has regretted passing that bill. That bill has led to mass incarceration all across the United States. And now let's pull up a tweet that was done by Nina Turner, who's the president of Our Revolution. And so the purpose of this tweet is to show this ridiculous opinion piece from the New York Times telling Biden that he shouldn't feel sorry about his involvement in the crime bill of 1994. But again, this is the press. This is an opinion piece, but at least Nina Turner is actually calling out the ridiculousness of this article and the devastating impact that the 1994 crime bill has done, predominantly towards minority communities. So real quick, we are going to play a clip of Symone Sanders, who's part of Joe Biden's presidential campaign. And if you want to see someone do mental gymnastics in regards to defending this ridiculous bill, I think you'll all be impressed on exactly how she's able to try and pull it off. But kudos to CNN for at least holding Biden accountable. But will we see any kind of coverage like this again for future campaigns or future coverage? Probably not.
Signs for that report. Joining us now to talk about this, Symone Sanders, senior advisor to the Joe Biden presidential campaign. Symone, hello to you.
Hello, Victor. How are you?
Very well, thank you. First, obvious question. You were the 2016 national spokesperson for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Why are you now on Team Biden?
Well, look, I think Vice President Biden is going to show everyone today exactly why I decided to join the campaign. Look, we are in a fight for the soul of this nation. And I believe that this is a pivotal point, just not in American history, but in the world history. We have to make a decision about who it is that we want to be, where it is we're going to go. And I believe that Vice President Biden has the right vision to take us there. So I'm very excited to be on Team Biden. I'm excited to be here in Philadelphia, Victor. Okay, we are kicking off officially our campaign today, and I really think what you're going to hear from the Vice President is a bookend on these themes that you've been hearing from us since he first announced that he is running.
All right. I don't have much time with you, and I wanted to get that out of the way because I'm sure the viewers have that obvious question. But let me talk about the Vice President here. And we heard from Senator Harris in that piece from Arlette about her refuting a claim that the Vice President made this week that the 1994 crime bill that he wrote did not contribute to mass incarceration. I want you to listen to former President Bill Clinton. This is President Clinton, who signed that into law in 2015.
I signed a bill that made the problem worse, and I want to admit it. In that bill, there were longer sentences, and most of these people are in prison under state law, but the federal law set a trend, and that was overdone. We were wrong about that.
President Clinton says that they were wrong about that. Senator Harris has said that it contributed to mass incarceration. Why is it Vice President Biden admitting what we're hearing from the former president?
Well, look, I think we can go back to Vice President Biden's comments at the National Action Network breakfast in January, where he noted that the crime bill, by way of this disparity between crack and powder cocaine, trapped an entire generation of people. Look, I think many people will tell you across the country, Victor, black folks included, that the crime bill and the reaction to what was happening in the early 90s. Now, look, I was only about 3 or 4, but I'm a student of history. What was happening in the early 90s, the reaction was an overcorrection to a very real issue. But we are going to see some policy rollouts from our campaign very soon, Victor. I know folks have questions about what is Vice President Biden's criminal justice policy.
Is it now
those are going to come.
Now,
but I mean,
the campaign's position that the crime bill did contribute to mass incarceration?
Victor, I think the Vice President, his comments speak for themselves. What is very clear is
his comment was that it does not contribute to mass incarceration. The former president who signed it said it did.
Look, Victor, if we play the whole clip, what he also said was, his comment was, what he also said was that the majority of folks that are incarcerated were incarcerated at the state level.
And there's a reason for that. Let me put up the truth in sentencing incentives here.
And I mean, there is a reason for that.
But there's a reason. Let me put it up. Let me put it up on the screen, guys. The truth in sentencing section of the 1994 crime bill. This is page 21. It incentivized, it offered billions of dollars to build new correctional facilities if states would increase the percentage of convicted violent offenders, increase the average prison time, increase the percentage of the sentence was there. Did this bill not incentivize putting more people in jail and keeping them there longer?
Victor, I am not going to sit here and tell you the crime bill was perfect. There was some really great preventative things that it did. It took on the NRA, and then there was an overcorrection. What you're describing was an overcorrection. There was a reach. Some folks went too far. The bill wasn't perfect. Republicans fought to put a lot of things in that bill. Democrats fought to get a lot of things out of the bill. But at the end of the day, Victor, at the end of the day, no one is suggesting that what has happened, what has ravaged communities over the last 27 years does not need to be fixed. No one is suggesting that there is not a real issue, there's not a real problem or a real issue. And I'm here to tell you that Vice President Biden will roll out, you'll see a criminal justice policy soon. We are going to continue to have this conversation about the crime bill throughout the campaign trail. But we're also going to put forward some policies, Victor. So just wait and see. Give us a minute. Wait and see.
We will look forward to those. Symone Sanders, thanks so much.
First, I'm impressed with the mental gymnastics that Symone Sanders was doing and that CNN interview. And at least two, kudos to that anchor who was actually really asking her some very on-point questions about the 1994 Crime Bill Act. And three, like I said earlier in this video, Bill Clinton has apologized for signing that bill into law. He has said, good old Teflon Bill has said that it led to more problems. The United States is this great bastion of liberty, or so we're told. But yet we have the highest amount of people incarcerated behind bars. Yet Biden and his campaign are refusing to apologize. And when you have opinion pieces from the New York Times that get called out by Nina Turner saying that Biden has nothing to apologize for, well, then of course everyone's going to be upset. And people are going to start questioning who exactly Joe Biden is. And there's a lot of, again, huge applause for Nina Turner actually bringing that article to light, because we need to understand that the 1994 Crime Bill Act, again, led to mass incarceration for people, specifically minority communities. So I think as a final note for this perspective, the debates haven't even started yet, but yet somehow the press is anointing Biden as somebody that's inevitable, that somebody who's going to get the nomination. But if it is Biden versus Trump, well, we could be looking at something like 2016 all over again. In fact, let's rewind back the clocks and look at this video from 2016, where then Vice President Joe Biden was speaking to Bill Clinton's former press secretary, George Stephanopoulos, at the 2016 DNC convention in Philadelphia. And in fact, we should all kind of take a step back and really be concerned about Joe Biden and whether or not he truly should be the nominee.
A fair amount of drama yesterday, the first night on the convention floor. You still got a lot of angry Bernie Sanders supporters. What more needs to be done to unify this party?
I don't think anything more has to be done, George. Look, think about it. They went out and busted their neck for the better part of a year. They came close. They've had more impact on the Democratic Party than all the other delegates combined. And they're beginning to realize it.
Except you saw Sarah Silverman last night call out some of those Bernie or bust delegates saying they're being ridiculous.
Sure, she did, but that's, look.
Is she right?
Look, it's a process, man. You know, it's you got to give people a chance to kind of get over it, and they're getting over it.
But what do you say to when one of those Bernie delegates comes to you and says, listen, I'm just not going for Hillary. I'm standing by my principles.
You know, I look at you, I said, I know you're going to go for Hillary. I know you're not.
How do you know?
I just know, because you're as moral and centered as you say you are. I know you can't vote for Trump. I know.
What's it going to take to convince them?
They're already convinced. They're just angry.
They don't sound convinced.
Oh, they're going to be. Look, I mean, I wish we could follow every delegate who says, I'm not going with Hillary, into the polling booth.
You're convinced?
I'm convinced. They're not going to pull the lever for Trump, for God's sake. If they're here in this floor for Bernie, they can't possibly, if they're going to be consistent with the essence of what they say they're about, getting big money out of politics, making sure that people have an even chance, education for people. How they vote for Trump?
If that's not prophetic, I don't know what is. First, a couple of things. Number one, during the 2016 general election cycle, there were Bernie Sanders supporters and delegates that did vote for Hillary Clinton. But number two, 46.9% of the American population chose not to vote. It was the lowest voter turnout in American history, especially in regards for the office of presidency. A lot of people didn't like Trump or Clinton, and no one felt like those two represented their values. That's how we got Trump. because the DNC and corporate media felt like gambling on a corporate candidate. How did that turn out for us? And it almost seems like 2016 is here all over again, even though it's 4 years later. And again, the establishment media is saying that Joe Biden is the anointed one, that he's the one that's going to get the nomination, that he's popular, that he's leading in the polls, when in fact, those polls have been proven to be manufactured. They're using landline phones. They're only polling people who are 50 years old or older. They're ignoring young people. And any press event that Joe Biden is holding is usually in a small room, or there's very few at all. He has very few interactions with the press. And this is concerning because if he is the nominee, more people are going to look at Joe Biden's voting record, his past statements, and who he really is. And we could potentially have another term of President Trump. This is why we have to get involved during this election cycle. And this is why it's also important for everyone who lives in whatever state you live in to understand your state laws and how the voting record works there and how to tally up our votes, because we got to make sure that there's true accountability and transparency. Otherwise, we could see the DNC committing election fraud again and corporate media turning a blind eye again. And then somehow a corporate candidate like Joe Biden gets the nomination. We got to fight for a better future. And to the Bernie Sanders campaign and the Tulsi Gabbard campaign and to all the other presidential campaigns, you're going to have to be on point and call out the clear hypocrisy that is in the Biden campaign. He is somebody that is clearly out of touch. He plagiarizes other work, and he hasn't really learned his lesson in regards to being inappropriate towards women and children. If we want to fight for a better future, we have to step up and hold all these politicians accountable. This is Kit with Perspectives. Peace, everyone. Hey, did you like that video? Hit the subscribe button, hit that ring bell notification so that way you're informed when we upload more content to the Hard Lens Media YouTube channel.